Lesson 4. Attributes of Early Civilizations. After the Neolithic Revolution, many individuals continued to live as nomads or semi-nomads, engaging in hunting, gathering, or managing herds of domesticated animals. People typically produced or collected just enough resources to fulfill the immediate requirements for food, shelter, and clothing for their family. Even in communities that embraced farming as a lifestyle, agriculture was primarily focused on subsistence, with families growing only what was necessary for survival. Families were largely self-reliant, using their own skills and resources to meet their needs. There were no significant disparities in wealth among families, as everyone contributed to the group's well-being. Leaders made decisions through collective agreement, relying on the input and consensus of the group. Community order and harmony were maintained through discussions and negotiations, often led by elders, including warriors and spiritual figures. Additionally, long-term stability depended on fostering peaceful ties with neighboring groups, frequently established through trade. Unlike earlier societies, early civilizations developed in densely populated areas, where large communities collaborated to generate surplus food and materials. These surpluses were distributed through systems of exchange. In farming communities, the availability of surplus food allowed families to grow larger, often with 6 or 7 children, which contributed to a rapid increase in the global population. This agricultural-based population growth supported the expansion of cities. Farmers in rural regions supplied food to urban centers where people depended on these resources, as urban populations typically did not produce their own food. A defining characteristic of these early civilizations was specialization. Individuals focused on specific roles, such as farming, writing, or performing religious ceremonies, which marked a shift from earlier ways of life. The exchange of goods and services became essential for meeting people's needs. For instance, craftspeople who created tools and clothing relied on farmers for food. Similarly, farmers depended on craftspeople for tools and garments. A weaver might receive wool from a shepherd to make fabric, which could then be traded with a physician for medicine or given to a priest as compensation for performing a religious ritual. This interconnected system of trade and specialization was a hallmark of early civilizations. The system of exchange introduced social hierarchies within communities. Individuals who managed to gather more resources gained wealth, which they often passed down to their descendants. This wealth provided a foundation for acquiring political and religious influence. Meanwhile, those engaged in labor and production typically remained in lower positions within society. This division, known as social stratification, became a defining feature of early civilizations. It resulted in significant differences in wealth and status among families and individuals. People with similar levels of wealth and social standing formed distinct groups or classes, which were organized into a ranked structure, with the highest classes at the top and the lowest at the bottom. As populations expanded, the structure of governance evolved significantly. In smaller groups, decisions about critical matters like war or migration were made collectively, as survival depended on mutual cooperation. Maintaining peace and order often fell to individual families, with societal customs serving as a guide for correcting improper behavior. For instance, the San people of South Africa practiced a ritual dance to seek advice from their elders on resolving conflicts. Simply gathering together often helped restore harmony within the community. In larger societies, authority shifted to centralized figures such as priests and kings, who wielded power to enforce obedience among their subjects. These leaders offered protection and the promise of prosperity, which farmers and artisans reciprocated by providing food, goods, and eventually paying taxes. This arrangement further solidified both the emerging social hierarchy and the division of labor within these early civilizations. In conclusion, as civilizations developed around the world in this way, they shared the features noted. Their existence did not mean the end of older ways of living, however. Nomadic and semi-nomadic peoples not only remained an integral part of the ancient world, but they also provided crucial resources and a vehicle for the exchange of knowledge and culture. They were particularly important as a means of connecting one large city to another. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at the world's first great cities in ancient Mesopotamia. See you then.